Okay, and cat's whiskers and baloney and how?
Hollywood has been a world of glitz and glamour for as long as we can remember. It was where stars could light up every silver screen and command a huge audience to be engrossed for hours. On screen, they seemed to have it all. However, behind the scenes, they were battling many personal demons, financial ruin, and fading fame. You will be surprised to know that many iconic actors passed away penniless and forgotten by the same industry they built. The question is, what went wrong? Here are some golden age actors who passed away broke. Number 8. Judy Garland.
Well, it's true, you know. I've had, maybe it will distress.
Judy Garland had a talent like no other that captivated many people. She was born as Frances Ethel Gum in 1922. From her early days on Earth, she had a passion for acting and invested much in it. One of the roles she played that boosted her in the eyes of many people was her unique portrayal of Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Her memorable performance helped her gain international stardom, making her one of MGM's most bankable stars in the 30s and 40s. Judy wasn't just known for her excellent performance in The Wizard of Oz. She also gave stunning performances in films like Meet Me in St. Louis and Easter Parade. And these movies helped her soon become a family name and a leading lady in Hollywood's golden age. She was a versatile actress who had taken on some of the most difficult and dramatic roles, and finally, one of those roles earned her an Academy Award nomination. On screen, Judy was the definition of perfection. She had a thriving career and was so beautiful. However, her off-screen life was filled with a lot of challenges. Her love for acting came with a price, and that was the pressures of the studio system. Judy was also subjected to an individual who had strict control over her appearance and performance. As a result of the standards that were placed before her, she became highly dependent on prescription medications. She even developed a lot of personal struggles as a result of it. It didn't take long before these struggles and medication began affecting her mental and physical health. Helping her develop a series of mental health disorders was not the only thing her representatives plagued her with. They also ensured that their poor representation made the young woman experience financial difficulties throughout her life. Irrespective of the fact that she earned a lot of substantial sums throughout her career, Judy's funds were still mismanaged and exploited by her representatives, and soon she went into a series of debts. When the late 1960s came, she owed the IRS hundreds of thousands of dollars, which resulted in tax liens on her home and other assets. Judy kept performing to get rid of these financial problems, not minding that her health was declining by the second. She was so good that she connected with her audiences even with failing health and showcased her talent. Unfortunately, on the 22nd of June 1969, she was found lifeless in her London home. She passed away at 47, and the cause of her demise was rumored to be an accidental overdose of barbiturates. By the time she passed, she was still in so much debt. Number 7. Bela Lugosi.
Okay, and cat's whiskers and baloney and how?
Bela Ferenc Deso Blasco, popularly known as Bela Lugosi, was born in 1982, and it didn't take long before he became the talk of every horror cinema. He achieved this by portraying Count Dracula in the 1931 film adaptation. Bela had a thick Hungarian accent and a hypnotic gaze, making his performance the very definition of the vampire archetype for generations. After the Dracula movie was released, it became a huge success, and just like that, Bela found himself being the go-to guy for almost every horror role. In these roles, he would usually be made to portray the role of a sinister character. And he did just that, in films such as White Zombie and Son of Frankenstein. After acting in horror movies for a while, Bela longed to diversify his acting portfolio. However, he was so good at these roles that the industry kept casting him in these roles over and over again, thereby limiting his opportunities. In addition to feeling like he was stagnant, Bela developed a deep love for morphine, which all began as a simple treatment for the back pain that he sustained during his service in World War I. He became so dependent on this hard substance that it soon began to affect his professional reliability, and also led to him getting fewer acting opportunities. Before people knew what was happening, Bela Lugosi, the most loved horror movie actor, began to appear in extremely low-budget films like Glenn or Glenda and Bride of the Monster, directed by Ed Wood. Even though these movies have become cult classics today, they did nothing to revive his dying career back then. Soon, Bela began to face many financial difficulties in his later years. He got a tiny apartment in Los Angeles and relied on his friends and fans to support him. However, it has been reported that Frank Sinatra made anonymous donations to support him in his final years. However, that support was not able to revive the man's career, and he lost his life to a heart attack on the 16th of August, 1956, at 73. Bela was buried in one of his Dracula costumes to fulfill his family's final wish. He was buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, California. Number 6. Veronica Lake.
That was 17.
You were 17 at that time?
This is 48 now.
Veronica Lake was born in 1922 as Constance Frances Marie Ockelman. During the early 40s, she was a Hollywood sensation. She was also famously renowned for her sultry screen presence, as well as her iconic peak, a boo hairstyle, which soon grew to become a cultural phenomenon. Veronica performed extremely well in movies such as Sullivan's Travels and This Gun for Hire. Soon she built a very solid status for herself as a leading lady and also everyone's favorite pin-up girl during World War II. In front of many people, Veronica had the best life one could ever imagine. However, that perfect life was filled with many personal struggles. Soon, her struggles overwhelmed her, and she then developed a reputation for being extremely difficult, as she was always clashing with her co-stars and directors. It didn't take long before she developed an unhealthy love for alcohol, but unfortunately, she developed this love when she had already reached her peak years. Her attitude made it difficult for people to relate to her, and soon she began to decline many film offers. By the time the late 40s came, she had faded away and began to take on extremely minor roles and stage performances to make ends meet. By this time, people began recognizing that she was battling many difficulties. So, people began to look deeper into her personal life and realized it was just as disastrous as the other parts. They realized that the young lady had been married 4 times, and each marriage ended in divorce. That wasn't the only thing that people realized about the beloved Veronica, though. It soon became clear to everyone that she was also mismanaging her finances and was involved in many legal troubles, including a lawsuit from her mother for lack of support, which strained her resources the most. When the cities arrived, Veronica finally threw in the cap and left Hollywood for New York City. In New York, she worked as a waitress under a pseudonym, eager to escape the shadow of her former glory. She did this for many years. However, during the 70s, she attempted a comeback by publishing her autobiography and appearing in regional theater. This comeback was not so strong because of the singular factor of heavy drinking, which had made her health deteriorate so much over the years. Finally, in June 1973, she was diagnosed with acute hepatitis and kidney injury in Vermont. This sickness led to her demise on the 7th of July, 1973. She was 50 years old when she passed, and to fulfill her wishes, Her ashes were scattered off the coast of the Virgin Islands. Number 5. Buster Keaton.
Is no good because that plate flying off detracts.
Joseph Frank Keaton, popularly known as Buster Keaton, was born in 1895. He was more than just an actor, and this is because he was the pioneer of physical comedy. Many referred to him as a silent movie star and a fearless stuntman. Buster is mainly remembered as an artist with a stone-faced expression that soon became his trademark. He was so popular for this that people soon gave him the nickname the Great Stone Face. Buster mostly starred in daring and innovative films, which always captured the audience's attention. During the 1920s, he had grown so much and reached the peak of his career. With his creative mind, he created some of the most significant masterpieces of silent films. These films were truly extraordinary. They all had very clever stories, groundbreaking special effects, and Buster's jaw-dropping stunts, which he always performed without a stunt double. By this time, Buster was the envy of many people as he had complete freedom to create and produce films all under his own independent company, Buster Keaton Productions. His influence grew across the industry with every movie he produced, making him one of Hollywood's most respected and highest-paid talents. However, everything changed in 1928 when Buster signed with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer because he was under financial pressure. He later grew to call this decision the worst mistake of his life. This was because after he signed with MGM, he lost the autonomy that he once had. Before Buster could even comment, he realized that scripts were handed to him daily, and he was assigned to many directors. As a result, he lost that spark that made his early films magical. This decision trapped him in delivering very mediocre roles that stifled all of his artistic skills and stopped his creative juices. However, that wasn't the only trouble he faced, because just as his professional life was beginning to take a toll, his personal life also went downhill. First, his marriage to the beautiful Natalie Talmadge fell apart, and he faced a very bitter divorce and a heavier financial settlement. At that point, Buster felt like his life had no meaning, and so he turned to alcohol for comfort. Another bad decision. Alcohol further destroyed his life, and when the 30s came, he had become a shadow of his former glorious self. Struggling to survive, Buster found a small job working behind the scenes as a gag writer. He occasionally took part in low-budget films and television commercials. Regarding his finances, he never regained his wealth, so he lived a modest life for the rest of his years. However, Buster still had a deep passion for performing, and so when the 50s and 60s came around, he underwent a quiet resurgence by appearing on television and even receiving a standing ovation from the new generation. Unfortunately, this new joy did not last, because Buster passed away on the 1st of February, 1966 from lung cancer at the age of 70. As of the time he passed, he had no fortune to his name. Number 4. Mickey Rooney.
My mother went down, and I had tow hair. I was blonde.
Mickey Rooney was a star from birth, and when he grew up, he became the very face of Hollywood and one of the most recognized actors in the 20th century. He was born in 1920 as Joseph Ewell Jr. When the 1930s came, Mickey had grown so much that he was recognized as the biggest box office draw in the world and could earn himself millions. He worked with everything he had, and soon he was one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood. Mickey hit the peak of his career when he starred in the film series Andy Hardy. In this series, he played the role of a mischievous yet wholesome all-American boy. However, that wasn't the only movie in which he was a star. He also played excellent roles in many films and starred with Judy Garland in a musical hit called Babes in Arms. His performance in this was electrifying, earning him an Oscar nomination when he was 19. During this period, Mickey had such great talent, and coupled with his youthful energy, he seemed unstoppable. However, events that led to his downfall had already been sown behind the scenes. The thing that most people noticed about Mickey was that he always lived so fast and spent money faster. He had a plethora of luxury cars and houses, he was always gambling, and he was involved in 8 marriages, one of which was his short-lived union with Ava Gardner. Unfortunately for him, all of these quickly joined forces in draining his fortune. As if that was not enough, Mickey was in the habit of trusting the wrong people. These people, mostly his business managers and some family members, were extremely skilled at manipulating and exploiting his business. They were so cruel to him that, despite earning millions before, he had to file for bankruptcy in 1962. That was the beginning of his problem, and soon his career faded as he aged out of his boyish roles. Despite this setback, he acted and appeared on television and in movies for many decades. Still, he never achieved the financial success he once had. The most unfortunate incident was that in his final years, he suffered elder mistreatment at the hands of his stepson. This was the breaking point for Mickey, who had spent his whole life entertaining America. Mickey passed away at the age of 93 in 2014. Unfortunately, he did not outlive his financial woes, and his vast estate was estimated to be worth $18,000 only at the time of his passing. Number 3. Dorothy Dandridge. During her prime years, Dorothy was considered one of the African-American actresses who constantly broke barriers for people in her community, especially when opportunities were extremely scarce. When Dorothy got into performing, she spent most of her time with her sister and another singer, performing in a group that they formed called the Dandridge Sisters. The 3 of them were highly talented and typically performed in many shows. However, it was difficult to say that Dorothy did not stand out because from that moment, she had an extraordinary talent. She was also very charismatic, and this eventually led her to Hollywood. By the time the 50s came, she was already a shining star, and all of her performances, especially the one she did in Carmen Jones, confirmed her place in history. The performance spoke to so many people that she soon became the first African-American woman to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress. Regardless of the breakthrough she made in the industry, her career was far from easy. She was met with a lot of opposition, and that was because, in the 50s, Hollywood was a tough place for a woman of color, and women of color rarely had opportunities there. Despite her acting abilities, she was always typecast and given roles that never truly showcased her full potential. Even after her Oscar nomination, Dorothy still struggled to find substantial roles, and almost all of the films she was given were underfunded or exploitative. In addition to the struggles she constantly experienced in her professional life, she also battled a lot in her personal life. Dorothy was married twice, and the first marriage was to Harold Nicholas. Their marriage was beautiful, and they gave birth to their daughter, Harolyn. However, Harolyn was born with brain damage, and as a result of this, it became tough for Dorothy to care for her. Soon after that, she married Jack Dennison, and the marriage also ended. People said it ended because of mistreatment and further financial strain. Despite all these challenges, Dorothy still tried to maintain a thriving career, but she could not go far with limited finances. With that realization, she turned to the nightclub circuit to help her regain financial stability. However, this effort was not successful. After this, she decided to go into investment, and like that, she made a very bad investment in oil wells, which left her in financial ruin. Dorothy passed away in her Los Angeles apartment in 1965 at 42. Her cause of demise was identified as an overdose of the antidepressant imipramine. By the time she passed, she was penniless and had only $2.14 in her bank account. Number 2. Marie Prevost. Mary Bickford Dunn, popularly known as Marie Prevost, was born on the 8th of November, 1896 in Sarnia, Ontario. Marie did something extraordinary in her career because she rose to fame during the silent film era. People loved her charm as well as her beauty. When she started her journey in the industry, she was one of Mack Sennett's bathing beauties. She was so successful in these comedy shorts, which aired in the 1920s, that she soon began taking on roles in feature films. When the 20s came, she had grown so much that she even became a leading lady at Warner Brothers, where she starred in movies directed by Ernst Lubitsch. To everyone, including Marie, this transition to sound films was the best thing ever. But when the late 20s came, she soon realized that the transition was the beginning of her decline. First, her voice was seen by many people as unrefined, and it did not suit the new medium. This led to her getting fewer film roles. As if she were not struggling enough with her professional life, Marie's personal life also began to experience struggles. The biggest bomb was dropped in 1926, when her mother lost her life in a car accident. Marie was devastated when this happened, and the loss of her mother affected her so much that she became depressed and turned to alcohol for comfort. Her mother's demise also made her lose focus on her life, and when the 30s came, her career had dwindled, and she was no longer a sought-after actress. Marie had to give up the life of comfort as she moved into a modest apartment on Cahuenga Boulevard in Hollywood. She lived there alone for a few years, wallowing in self-pity and grief. On the 21st of January 1937, the neighbors reached out to the authorities when they heard a consistent barking sound from her dachshund. Police rushed in immediately, and when they entered her apartment, they saw Marie lying on her bed, lifeless. Her cause of demise was determined to be acute, allonissos complicated by malnutrition. Number 1. Joe E. Brown.
And on my left, a young man who has just returned from a very successful trip to Walgreens.
Joe Evans Brown was born on the 28th of July, 1890, in Holgate, Ohio. Joe had always shown signs of being a passionate lover of movies, and when he grew, he pursued his dreams and soon became the most beloved American actor and comedian. Joe was particularly known for his wide grin and impeccable comedic timing. He labored for a long time before he finally began to gain fame during the 1930s and the 1940s. His fame came from movies like Some Like It Hot, in which he played the character of Osgood Fielding III. During the early days of Joe's career, he was seen in vaudeville and Broadway, but after spending some time there, he gained the knowledge and exposure he needed, and finally went to Hollywood. In all of his roles, Joe was seen as a lovable everyman. Since the audience was currently facing the Great Depression, his character resonated deeply with many people. As a result of his energetic performances and welcoming appearance, Joe soon became one of the highest-paid comedians of his time. Despite Joe's success, he still faced many financial and personal challenges. In 1939, he had a very terrible car accident that caused him to have a severe back injury. Unfortunately, the recovery time of this injury was excruciating, and it affected his career. Also, he lost his son, Don, in a terrible plane crash during World War II. During his later years, he continued performing in films and on television. However, his roles became fewer as the days went by, and he was no longer a sought-after actor. Unfortunately, Joe passed away at the age of 81 from heart failure and pneumonia. A few people attended his burial, and there were a few public tributes dedicated to him. The question on everyone's mind is, what exactly made these biggest stars lose it all? Could there be more to the story of their life? Which of these transitions from riches to nothing surprised you most? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.